afternoon, PAX Australia! Welcome to our dev panel, Crafting Characters, the Style and Substance of Final Fantasy XIV. We are joined by two members of our dev team who have come all the way from Japan to be here with us in Melbourne. We will be exploring the intricate process of bringing memorable characters to life, including or starting from the initial concepts up to the final implementation in-game. Now, without further ado, please welcome to the stage Senior Story Designer Natsuko Ishikawa and Quest Designer Saki Takayanagi.
Hi guys! I'm Natsuko Ishikawa, Senior Story Designer. 今日はどうぞよろしくお願いします。
So thank you for having me today.
はじめまして、クエストデザイナーの高柳早紀です。本日はよろしくお願いします。
Hello everyone, I am Saki Takayanagi, a Quest designer. I'm looking forward to this panel.
そして今日私たちの通訳をしてくれるお二人も紹介させてください。
Yes, quick introduction from the translators. Hello, my name is Aimi. I'm going to be helping with translations for Ms. Ishikawa.
And hello everyone, my name is Heather and I'll be helping out with translations for Ms. Takayanagi.
それでは、まずは最初に私たちオーストラリアでの公演は初めてになるので改めて自己紹介をさせてください。
Okay, so before we get to the main part of the presentation, this is our first time doing a panel session here in Australia. So if we could do a quick introduction.
ではまず私から。
Okay, so this is me.
私の一番わかりやすい仕事はシナリオのライティングです。
So I think the most recognizable work that I did is writing scenario stories.
大きなところではハイデリンゾディアク編と呼ばれている 6.0 までのメインシナリオを担当しておりました。
So one of my biggest works that I've done is the main scenario quests in the arc that we call the Heidelin and Zodiac saga.
6.1 からはシニアという肩書きになってシナリオ班をサポートしています。
Since patch 6.1, I've been appointed as senior of my team, and so I've been more in a support role.
また、個人個人のスタッフでは進めにくい部分について窓口になったりフォローアップをしていました。
And then for those times where things might not progress as planned with individuals, or if there are needing for coordination between teams, I would help in there as well.
続いて私の自己紹介もさせてください。
Next up, please allow me to introduce myself too.
私の主な仕事はクエストの設計や実装でシナリオ班と協力をしてクエストを作り上げています。
My main responsibilities are the design and implementation of quests, and I cooperate with the scenario team to implement the quests.
石川さんとはグレンメインクエストのアジムステップ編、また次元の狭間オメガクエストなどを一緒に作っていました。
I've worked with Ishikawa-san on the on the Azim Step portion of the Stormblood main scenario quests, as well as the Omega quests.
そしてもう一つの仕事が人型のキャラクターのコーディネートです。
And another one of my roles is outfit design for humanoid characters.
あんまり聞かない仕事というか、FF14 ならではのお仕事じゃないですか。
Yeah, I think outfit coordination is a little unusual, huh? I guess it's very specific to Final Fantasy XIV.
そうですね。
Absolutely.
一言で言うと NPC をキャラメイクする仕事なのですが、詳しいお仕事の内容はパネルを進めながら紹介させてください。
Simply put, it's character creation for NPCs, but I'd like to delve into the specifics in the panel.
はい、なら早速本編に行ってみましょう。
All right, then let's jump into the main part of the presentation.
はい、というわけで今日は私たちがシナリオ担当とコーディネート担当を務めたキャラクターについてどういう意図で見た目を作っていったのかご紹介していきます。
All right, so we're going to talk about from a scenario writer perspective and then a character outfit coordination perspective on how we craft our characters.
なおこの講演にはドーントレイルの重大なネタバレはないんですがエンドウォーカーまでのネタバレは含みますのでご了承の上ご視聴ください。
And so with this panel discussion, we are refraining from any Dawn Trail spoilers, of course, but there may be some that do touch upon spoiler-ish elements throughout the different patches up to Endwalker.
大丈夫ですか？
Everybody
いいです
caught
か？
up? We're good?
それでは、まず作業内容の紹介も兼ねて一つサンプルを出してみたいと思います。
Okay, so we are going to take a look at some of the examples, including some of the screens that we utilize while we're working.
7.0 で私がシナリオを担当したのはわちゅめきめき繁華街の採掘師園芸士向けのクエスト。
So what I've handled in the 7.0 scenario perspective is the Gatherer class quest.
シューニエーズ・アポサカリーですね。
Shunye's Apothecary.
繁華街のクエスト全体が異文化コミュニケーションを題材としている中でビエラ族とシャトナ族を似ている面や違って見る面から掘り下げてみようというお話になっております。
So of course with this, we focus in on the different cultures that exist on Tyrol, and we took a deeper look into the Vieiras and the Shatnas.
その目的を短い尺の中で果たすために登場人物のコンセプトは極力分かりやすくしています。
And since we did have a limited time to depict the story, we tried to make our concept very concise and very clear to understand.
まずシューニエはトラル大陸にいる方の種族だと分かりやすいようにトライオラを思わせる色合いに。
So for Shunye, who's local to the Tyrol continent, we try to make him very clearly inspired by the local sort of territory and the colors.
対してウブロはオサード小大陸の山岳地帯に暮らすビナビエラ族です。
And then of course with Uvlo, he comes from the Othard continent in the snowy mountains.
なので雪山らしい色合いでお願いをしました。
And so my request to the design team was to make sure that we kind of reflect that snowy sort of atmosphere.
他にもいくつかの大事な要素をまとめてこれらをできるだけシンプルに表現してほしいと高柳さんに発注をしました。
And then of course there were other elements that I wanted incorporated as well, so I also compiled that to make my request into Ms. Takayanagi.
発注書を受け取ったらコーディネート作業を始めていきます。
Once I receive that order, I'll get started on the design work.
作業には画面に映っているような専用のツールを使用します。
To carry out that work, I use a dedicated tool, as you can see on the screen.
設定できる項目は皆さんがキャラメイクするときとほとんど同じです。
The elements that we can set are more or less the same than as the standard character creation available to the players.
種族や性別、髪や瞳の色、顔タイプを決めて装備を着せていきます。
I'll decide on the gender and the race, the color of the hair and the eyes, and also the face type, and then I'll get to work putting on the gear.
こんな感じかな、こんな雰囲気かなと毎日こねくり回しながらいくつか候補を作成します。
I'll spend day in, day out tinkering away. I'll be doing things like, maybe, does this feel right? How about this vibe? And through that process, I'll prepare several options.
時には石川さんと通話をしながら決めていくこともあります。
There are also times when I'll get Ishikawa-san in on a call to make a decision.
そしてこれかなというものを納品し、石川さんの最終確認が取れたら完了です。
And so once I've settled on a direction, I'll deliver it to Ishikawa-san, and if I get her final confirmation, it's all complete.
ほら、いい写真。
Wow, what a nice photo.
ですね。今日はこういう高柳先生がこのパネルのために撮影してきてくれた写真もたくさん登場するので、トークと一緒にお楽しみいただければと思います。
Oh yes, of course. These screenshots are taken by Takayanagi Sensei, and so you'll be seeing those throughout our panel as well.
頑張って撮ってきました。
I did my best taking the shots.
彼らは姿も設定も含めてビエラのいいところが詰まったキャラクターですよね。
Including both their appearance and their personal stories, I think they really encapsulate all the great things about Vieira, don't they?
でもそこは本当ね、関わったスタッフみんなのおかげだと思ってます。
And I think that's all thanks to not just your hard work, but I think everybody that was involved on the teams.
彼らはあまりにもこう美術品みたいに隙がない綺麗さなので、高級レストランに行ってる時みたいないたたまれなさがちょっとあるんですよね。
And as you can see, they're so fancy and they're so good looking, and it almost has that sort of like not tickling, but almost like an embarrassing, like, oh no, I'm in a very high class restaurant, and they're like pieces of artworks.
だから実はちょっと OK した時にちょっとだけ不安がありました。
So when I did give the okay, I was a little bit worried.
けど私たち2人の他にこのクエストの実装してくれた担当者がいて、彼がですね組み込みをしている時にずっと言ってたことがあるんですよ。
But that said, when we got to implementing these characters, there was one other teammate that we were working with who actually built these characters into the quest, and he always kept saying this one thing.
顔がいい。この
Their faces are so handsome.
この角度から映すと最高に顔がいい。
I could just get them at this angle. It's so beautiful.
で、だからその情熱に背中を押される形でこれで OK しました。
So seeing that really encouraged me to be confident about my decision.
そんな彼らに会える繁華街のエクストラストーリーが来月のパッチ 7.1 で実装されますので、よかったら遊んであげてください。
You will be able to meet them in the additional Wachu Meki Meki quests releasing in patch 7.1 next month. So if you're interested, do check it out.
さあ、ではこんな調子で他のキャラクターも見ていきましょう。
All right, so while we're at it, let's take a look at some other characters.
はい、まずはメインクエストのアジム編ステップ編に登場したシリアですね。
Yes, of course. We are very familiar with her through our Stormblood Azim step portion, Miss Serena.
彼女についてや雰囲気や顔立ちはすんなり決まったものの、ゲーム的な要件との落としどころを考える必要がありました。
And so in terms of this character, her appearance in terms of facial expressions and how she carries herself was relatively smooth decisions, but I think trying to place her within the overall narrative within the game was the challenge that we faced.
集節の合戦があるので、他のアウラ族と見分けがつく必要があったんです。
So of course there's this big battle that happens in the area with all of the auras kind of coming together, and so we had to have her stand out.
見分けがつくようにしたいけれども、同じ文化に住んでいるのだから共通の要素も必要という点を既存の装備で満たすのが難しかったです。
Yeah, we wanted them to stand out, but then again, at the same time, we needed some same elements because they're all living in the same cultural area. Meeting these requirements with existing gear was difficult.
各部族のイメージカラーも含めて相当悩みましたよね。
For sure, and I think each tribe sort of had their own theme color, so I think that was another part of the challenge that we had to overcome.
そんな中でシリナちゃんは草原の夕焼けが似合う子にしたいという気持ちを込めてコーディネートをしました。
So with that in the backdrop, I decided to myself, okay, I'm going to make Serena-chan a design that makes her look great in the sunset of the steppe.
夜のサドゥと昼のマグナイトね。
Of course, with Sadhu of the night and then Magnai, who is our little son.
いいバランスで仕上げてもらえて嬉しかったです。
And yes, I think we struck a really good balance.
では、
Next. みんな思うところが。
あら、何かしら
I wonder what it is.
こちらですね、第一世界の旅立ちの宿で出会うテスリーンです。
But of course, yes, we meet Tesleen fairly early on once we've stepped into the realm of the first.
彼女は素敵な子ですが、一緒にいられる時間が極端に短い。
And yeah, she's a wonderful girl, but again, our time with her was quite short.
ので、彼女の優しさや人当たりの良さが伝わりやすいようにしてほしいと高柳さんにお願いをしました。
So whenever we were coming up with Tesleen's idea, I would ask Takayanagi-san if we can make sure that we are bringing out her kindness, the fact that she's very caring of others.
最初から死ぬと分かっているキャラクターをコーディネートするのはカロリーがとても高く、微調整を何度も繰り返しましたね。
Oh, yes. To design a character who you know is going to die from the start, that really takes a lot out of you. And I went back and I repeated many, many fine adjustments.
積み食いになった後の姿を早々に発注しなければいけなかったこともあったので、漆黒で一番最初にコーディネートをしたキャラクターでした。
It was partially due to the fact that we had to put in the early order quite early on for her appearance as a Sin Eater, that she was the first character I designed in Shadowbringers.
闇の戦士が合流する前の日常ですね、これ。
I can imagine this is sort of a slice of life before our warrior of darkness steps in.
もう少し彼女とアリゼの話を見たかったなって思ってしまいますね。
Oh, yes. It makes me think, I really wish I could have seen more of her together with Alize.
では気を取り直してお次。
Okay, moving on to the next.
こちらバルシャンですね。彼は本体であるブリトラとの共通性を意識して、後々そっちが出てきても受け入れやすいようにしました。
So of course, with Varshan, we are familiar that Vritra will be appearing later on in the story as his sort of not host, but like the main existence. So we needed to make sure that they had that sort of common elements between them.
角の色も特注でブリトラに寄せています。
And of course, as you can see, the horns coming out of Varshan is made very similar to Vritra's, and that was a special order.
キャラモデリング班がブリトラの色に沿ったグラデーションを丁寧に対応してくださいました。
Yeah, the character modeling team very attentively applied a gradient that matches the color of Vritra.
あとはですね、竜の目を溝落ちあたりに埋めているという設定なので、そこが隠れる服にしてもらいました。
And of course, our settings has stipulated that the dragon's eye is kind of hidden underneath his rib cage or below his rib cage. So we made sure that the clothing design sort of hides where his dragon eye is.
ですね。バルシャンは人形の体なので、目や口は無表情になった時に生気を感じないようなコーディネートをしてみました。
Yes, that's right. Since Varshan is a puppet body of sorts, I tried designing him so that you wouldn't feel any life when there was no expressions in the eyes or the mouth.
さて続いては全身をオーダーメイドで作るキャラクターについても紹介してみましょう。
Next, I'd like to show you some characters where we made a order for the entire full body.
ここまでのキャラクターは既存のパーツや部分的に改造をしたパーツでコーディネートをしていました。
The characters we showcased so far were created using existing parts or parts that were partially modified.
けれど中にはシナリオ担当と相談をしながら発注書を作成し、アーティストにデザインを発注するキャラクターも存在します。
However, there are some characters where we will discuss with the person in charge of the scenario, and we will prepare an order for our artists to create the design.
こちらメーティオンもその一例ですね。
And of course, Meteon is one of them.
彼女のアートを発注する際にお願いした要点の一つに、人型の時でも鳥を連想するパーツを入れてほしいというのがありました。
And so whenever we were making the request for Meteon's design, one of the major points that we tried to come across is including elements that remind us of sort of a bird-like form, even when she is taking the form of a humanoid.
バルシャンとブリトラの共通点を作ったのと同じですね。
Very similar to when we were trying to think of making sure that Varshan and Vritra had some common elements.
天野義孝先生にお願いしていた終焉を歌うもののデザインが並行で進んでいたので、そちらにもあらかじめ鳥という要素をお伝えして後々一つのキャラクターとしてつなげやすいようにしました。
And of course, at the same time, we had requested Mr. Yoshitaka Amano to create the design for the end singer. And I think it helped that we had that sort of common element of having bird-like features so that we can connect these characters in the long run.
アートをもとにキャラクターモデリング班、モーション班、カット班との相談を経てモデルが作成されます。
The models are created on the artwork after consultation with the character modeling team, the motion team, and the cutscene team.
作成する中でキャラクターのスケール、つまり身長は私たちゲームデザイナーの方で決めていきます。
When it comes to the creation, the character's scale, or in other words, their height, is decided by us game designers.
登場人物を並べてシナリオや演出的な要件を聞いて決めることが多いですね。
There are often times when we'll line up the characters that will appear in the story, and we'll hear about information about the scenario or requirements related to the theatrics, and we will make decisions based on that.
このキャラクターはこのキャラクターを見上げてほしいから小さめでとか。
It could be things such as, we want this character to be looking up at that character, so let's make them small, and so on.
スケールといえばちょっと特殊な対応をしているのがリターンとイバリスに登場するアルマや漆黒のリーンです。
Speaking of character scale, and some of the more unusual ones are Alma from Return to Ivalice, and then Reen from Shadowbringers.
彼女たちは子供のようにも見えますが、内部的な設定は成人ミッドランダーです。
Yes, they may appear like kids, but on the inside, they're actually set up as adult Midlanders.
そこに特殊なスケールをかけて、通常の最小身長よりも小さくしています。
We've applied a special scaling so that they're shorter than the standard minimum height.
たくさん活躍するとか戦うこともあるという設定だった場合は、成人の動きで揃えなければならない場面が多いため、こういう実装をしています。
If it's decided that they're going to be playing an active part in the story or that they might be participating in battles, then there are often times when we would have to align their movements with adults, and this is the reason why we implemented them this way.
リーンを小柄にしていたのには物語的な理由もありました。
And of course, with Reen being a little smaller in frame is also due to due to her position in the story.
彼女はサンクレットに連れ出されるまでの長い間、ユーロモアで幽閉されていて、人生経験も乏しかった。
And so before Thancred had rescued her out of Yulmore, she was sort of closed in and she did not have very much experience in the outside world.
なのでミーフィリアと呼ばれていた頃は特に実年齢よりも幼く体も小さめでちょっと人形っぽい印象になるように、お願いしています。
And so, especially when during the scenario portion where she's still referred to as Minfilia, she is depicted as somebody who's a little more childlike compared to her actual age, and almost doll-like.
キャラクターの印象作りでは外見そのものやスケールだけでなく、立ち方や仕草も重要です。
For creating an impression of the character, it's not only their appearance or their size which is important, but it's also also things such as their gestures are important, such as how they stand.
キャラクターとお話しする際はぜひそこも注目してみてください。
When talking with the characters, be sure to pay attention to those aspects too.
いつも細かいところまで大事にしてくれてありがとうございます。
I really appreciate you paying attention to those details.
はい、では次はまたコーディネートで制作したキャラの紹介に戻っていきましょう。
Okay, moving back to characters that we've designed by outfit coordination.
よ余計
Oh. You okay?
ではこちら、新生のメインクエストで登場したオルシュファンです。
We are all too familiar with Horshfont from the A Realm Reborn story quests.
作る側として思い出深いのが彼の髪の色です。
So from a creator's perspective, it is most memorable for us. His hair color is very memorable to us.
それまでの FF14 ではどちらかというとリアル寄りの髪色が多くて、こういったビビッドな髪色はあまり使っていませんでした。
So of course, up to this point in Final Fantasy XIV, we were leaning more towards a realistic depiction of our characters, and so we didn't really have characters with such vividly colored hair.
そんな中でオルシュファンはキャラとしてもかなり振り切っているので試してみようかということになって、この彩度の高い水色になりました。
But among them, I think Horshfont was a character that really stood out for all of us. And so I think we wanted to sort of push the envelope to have his hair color this very vivid light blue.
当時はまだ装備のバリエーションも多くありませんでしたからね。
Well, after all, back at that time, there wasn't really much variation in terms of the gear.
だから重要なキャラクターをコーディネートで作るのは今の何倍も作業が難しかったかと思います。
So I think it's for that reason why it must have been several times more difficult to create a key character just by coordination alone compared to how it is now.
結果的にうまくはまってコーディネートの幅が増えてよかったです。
But I think it worked out really well in the end, and I think we were also able to sort of expand on what we could do with outfit coordination.
FF14 のキャラって頭身は高めなんだけれどリアルすぎないっていうね、独特なデフォルメ具合なんですよね。
And what's interesting with Final Fantasy XIV characters is that their head proportions are quite high, but then it's not too realistic, and so we have that sort of stylized look to them.
だからこの髪色も馴染んだんだろうと思ってます。
And so I think that's why we were able to make that vivid blue color work.
実は他のキャラでもフォトリアル路線だったら使えない技を使っているものは何個かあったりします。
And I also want to share that there were other characters that we may not have been able to get the effect had we been in a more photorealistic depiction of the characters.
Thank you. 一つの例が暗黒騎士クエストに出てきたフレイですね。
And one example is Frey from our Dark Knight job quests.
彼の顔をアップにしてみると、
So if you look at his face close up,
こう。
so this is how it looks.
これ普通にプレイヤーが着ると、
And if a player put on the same gear,
そう、こんな風に目の周りの肌が見えちゃうんですよね。
as you can see, you'll be able to tell the skin color underneath that helmet.
フレイの場合はこの部分を影の色に合わせることで頭装備の奥で目だけが光っているような印象にしています。
So when we designed Frey, we made sure to add that sort of shadow color around the eyes so that it looks like only his eyes are kind of glowing underneath his helmet.
これはちょうど素敵な装備が実装される予定だったのと、石川さんのやりたいキャラクターの内容が合致した奇跡的なキャラクターでしたね。
Oh, yeah, you could say this was a miraculous character in the regard that there just happened to be plans for some awesome pieces of gear, and that matched up perfectly with the character you wanted to do.
ぜひ絶対この装備を使いたい。でも目元だけはもうちょっとミステリアスにしたい。よし、力技でごまかそうみたいな。
Yes, I looked at that piece of gear and I really wanted to use it, but then at the same time I didn't want to have that embarrassing like lightness around the eyes, so I wanted to keep that air of mystery, so we kind of forced our way to get that effect.
そして力技で目元をミステリアスにしている人物はフレイだけではありません。
Speaking of trying to apply a special technique almost by force to hide their face, it's not just Frey.
彼、水晶光ですね。
Of course, we have our crystal exarch.
彼のフードの下の秘密を守るために2つの技が使われています。
So, in order to hide his identity underneath the hood, we did two things.
水晶光を横から見ると一般的なフードよりもかなり深い構造をしているのがわかります。
When viewed from the side, we can see that the Exarch's hood is quite deep, much deeper than a normal hood.
違和感のないギリギリの範囲まで深くしてもらいました。
I had it deepened to the extent possible as long as it doesn't look unnatural.
そしてフードを取ると
And when the hood is taken off,
こんな風に顔そのものに影を入れて彼の秘密を守っていましたね。
a shadow was placed on his face to protect his secret.
目って特に強い意味を持つパーツだと思っていて、
I think the eyes hold a very strong power on the face.
さっきのフレイは目だけが出ていることで素性は一切わからないけれども言っていることは真摯であるということを強調したかった。
So with Frey, while his face is hidden, so you don't know who exactly he is, his eyes are shown. So whatever he was saying was very sincere.
反対に目元を隠した水晶光は公正なキャラでありながら一番大事なことを隠しているというのを演出していました。
But on the flip side, with the exarch, with his eyes being hidden, while he's very benevolent and kind and very considerate, he is hiding the most important part.
ではもう一つだけ目にまつわる話をさせてください。
So speaking of eyes, I want to talk about this next thing.
こちらわかりますでしょうか。ベーネスたち古代人の目になります。
Of course, as you can see, these are the eyes of the ancients, including Venat.
エメトセルフとヒトロダイウスは特にエーテルがよく見える方ですが、あれほどの素質がなかったとしても古代人は魔法に親しんでいます。
So, of course, in the story, we find out that Emmet Selk and Hythlodaeus are able to sort of sense ether through their eyes. But even then, the people on Elpis and the ancients are very familiar with the use of magics.
現代の人たちよりもずっと魔法的なものを捉えやすく力を持った瞳ということでこういったデザインを制作してもらいました。
And so, compared to the modern day, they are more, again, familiar with magics, and so they had that sort of power in their eyes, and that was the concept I wanted for our team to work with.
ベーネスたちだけでなくエルピスにいる名もなきキャラクターたちの目にもそれぞれ輝きがあります。
And it's not only Venat and co. The unknown characters in Elpis also have their own special shine in their eyes.
コーディネートにする際には目の色と虹彩の色をああしてこうしてと考えるのが楽しかったです。
When I was designing them, I enjoyed thinking about what to do with the color of their eyes and their iris.
さっき石川さんが目は強い意味を持つパーツと言っていましたが、古代人はこの目を持つことでさらに特別感が増したんじゃないかなって思います。
Ishikawa-san mentioned how the eyes have a strong meaning, but I think it's because the ancients had these eyes that they kind of exhibited a greater sense of being a special people.
なお7.0 のグラフィックアップデートに付随して現在は彼らの目の輝きがかなり抑えめになってしまっています。
So I'm afraid with the graphical updates, we noticed that the eyes does not like sparkle as well as they did prior to the updates.
こちらは 7.1 にてプレイヤーキャラ関連の項目とともに調整されて 6.5 以前の印象に近くなる予定です。
But we are making adjustments for that, and so by the time patch 7.1 is applied, this will be part of our updates to character-related like adjustments made in the game. We're hoping that they'll look sparkly and shiny as they were when you saw them in 6.5 and earlier.
アップデートが来たらまたエルピスを巡ってみたいですね。
Oh yes, once the update hits, I'd love to go back to Elpis and take a wander around.
そして古代人でもう一人ご紹介したいキャラクターがいます。
Speaking of ancients, there's one more we'd like to showcase.
ヘルメスです。
It's Hermes.
彼は汎用パーツを一部改造しつつコーディネートによって制作したキャラになります。
He was a character created by modifying some generic parts, but the main process was carried out through coordination.
生真面目で口数が少ないけれど言動はとても優しいという点で発注を受けました。
I received an order along the lines of, it's a person who is too serious and doesn't speak much, but they're gentle in their actions and words.
他にも細かく説明をもらったんですが、とにかく第一印象は寝ていなさそうなお兄さんだなと。
I did receive some other detailed explanation, but in any case, my first impression was, I don't think this guy gets much sleep.
あまり喋らないなら表情で語ることも多いだろうと思い、目元の印象と寝ていなさそうな顔つきを目指した改造を施していただいています。
While thinking if he doesn't speak much, there must be more that we can say through his expressions. And with that in mind, I had some modifications made, aiming for an impression around the eyes and also a face that looks deprived of sleep.
目元はまつげの長さまで指定させてもらったり、輪郭も横から見えるときにどう見えるかなど、キャラ班にお付き合いいただいて調整をしています。
I went as far as specifying the length of the eyelashes and considered how the contours would look when he was viewed from the side. In such a fashion, the character team provided much of their time and attention in making the adjustments.
そうやってこだわってくれたおかげで顔立ちはすんなりと決まったのですが、最後の最後まで髪の色で悩んでいました。
And so because we had all of these details to work with, I think we were able to smoothly decide on what his face looks like. But again, we had to think about hair color.
正確には髪の色と連動しているまつげの色ですね。
More accurately, hair color and then the colors of the eyelashes because they kind of have to link together.
ヘルメスって仮面を外しているシーンがほとんど物憂げな場面なんですね。
And so whenever Hermes does not have his mask on, he's very melancholy.
だからこれはさっき高柳さんがまつげの長さにこだわったと言っていたのと同じ理由にはなるんですけれども、まつげで節目がちな印象を作りたかった。
And so this kind of ties into what Ms. Takayanagi was talking about when she had to specify the length of the eyelashes, because we wanted his eyes to look a little downcast.
この通り、まつげの色が濃いとまぶたの縁の黒と合わせて目元が陰っているように感じます。
So these were the choices we were faced. So if the eyelash color was darker, it kind of casts a shadow underneath his eyes.
一方でまつげの色が明るいと毛一本一本の印象が強まって繊細さが際立つ。
And then if we went with a lighter color, then you can see the individual lashes and it kind of gives that sort of delicate impression.
さあ、どっちを取るんだっていう。
And so which did we want to choose?
会場の皆さんごめんなさい。できるだけまつげの違いが分かるように撮影したのですが、少し見えづらいかもしれません。
To everyone who's joining us here at PAX, I do apologize. I tried my best to take the shot so that you'd be able to tell the difference in the eyelashes, but it might just be a little bit difficult to see.
本当にごめんなさい。後で配信で見ていただいてですね、配信で見てもよく分かんなかったら許してください。
So I hope you get a chance to see the archives maybe in higher resolution. And even then, if you're unable to tell, we apologize.
悩みに悩んで最終的には素直にイメージカラーを採用しました。
That said, after racking our brains on which one should we choose, we finalized it with the color that you see in game.
たくさん悩んで生まれたヘルメスのこと語る言葉は染みましたよね。
Yes, we racked our brains over Hermes, and then the words he spoke, they really hit hard, didn't they?
ちょっと白々しいし、お互いまつげまつげって語った後にもうね、その綺麗に締めようとしてもだいぶ手遅れ。
Okay, I think we can see through the act here. We've been talking about eyelashes, and like, oh, it hits hard, and kind of concluding in that way.
じゃあこの話題は切り上げて最後にもう一度ドーントレイルからこちらをご紹介したいと思います。
All right, let's bring this topic to a close, and finally, we'd like to jump back to Dawn Trail and showcase a little something.
フェイスの減退をレベル100にすると選択できるようになる暁のバカンス衣装です。
Yes, it's this, the vacation wear that you can choose for the Scions once they reach level 100.
これはあれだ。
How do I put this?
皆さんも覚えてらっしゃると思うんですけど、吉田さんがファンフェスで次の拡張は夏休みですって言ったんですよ。
So I think a lot of you may remember this, but when Yoshida-san had spoken at his keynote presentation, he was talking about going on a summer vacation.
でも開発している私たちからすると本当にそうかってなるわけで、
So from us creating this on the development team, we were thinking to ourselves, really?
わーい夏休みですねとはならなかったかも。
Yeah, I think for us in the development team, maybe it wasn't so much like, yay, summer vacation.
じゃあせめてトラルにいるどこかのタイミングでみんなちゃんと夏休みしてましたってことにしようということで服を選びました。
And so at least we wanted our players to think that the Scions got to go to Tyrol and they were able to find some time to do summer vacation, and that was our concept behind these outfits.
そんなわけで暁の人たちにお着替えをしてもらったのでご紹介できればと思います。
On that note, we've had the Scions dress up, so let's take a look.
まずは双子です。
Of course, we'd like to start with the twins.
アルフィノがこの夏はトラル大陸で休暇を過ごしますって両親に手紙を書いたんですよ。
So Alphino wrote his parents saying that we shall be going to Tyrol and we will be spending the summer there.
そうしたら父ちゃんが羽目を外しすぎない感じの服を送ってきたやつ。
And Fortuno probably thought to himself, I don't want my children misbehaving, so these are the clothes that he sent.
場合によってはね、冒険者とお得意様取引をした奥さんが大変な服装になっていますのでね。
Because after all, you never know, our custom deliveries client, Mrs. LeVeyer, might be wearing some very interesting clothing.
もう完全に警戒されてるよね、フルシュノにね。
I think Fortuno is very, very wary of what the adventurers might do.
でもね、フルシュノがまだこういうちょっと双子お揃いっぽい服を選んでしまうのをアベリアンスは微笑ましく見ていたんじゃないかなと思います。
But I can imagine with Fortuno kind of picking the twins' outfits to sort of match, and Amelian's kind of looking on warmly at that.
この2人の装備については今まで彼らの衣装を多くデザインしてくださったアーティストの名前さんによってデザインが書き起こされています。
One of our artists, Ms. Ayumi Namae, has designed many outfits for the twins, and she also prepared the designs for these ones.
端っこに載ってるんですけど、シャツとズボンのボタンが結構可愛いですよね。
As you can see on that far corner there, you see the button designs for their shirt and their trousers. I think those are really cute.
リュックもすごく可愛いですね。
Oh yeah, but also take a look at the backpack. That's super cute.
続いてクルルさんです。
And next up is Kryle.
普段の服装の色を取り入れつつも水着のデザインとしては大人っぽくてお姉さん感が出ています。
We incorporated colors from her usual clothing, but the swimsuit design gives her a more mature vibe.
これ後で紹介するヤシトラとお揃いなんですよね。
I think she has matching outfits with Yishtola, whom we're going to be showing later, right?
そうなんです。お姉さん組で一緒に買いに行った想定であえて同じ衣装にしています。
Absolutely. We imagined the two young ladies went shopping for their outfits together, and that's why it was an intentional choice to make them matching.
はい、お次はグラハです。
Next up is Graha.
彼はもともと部屋にこもって本を読んでいるタイプだったし、水晶校も遊んでる暇はなかったので、バカンスだよと言われてもどう過ごしていいかがわからない。
So Raha has always been a bookworm, so he'd always be in his room, kind of locked up and reading books. And then as the Crystal Exarch, I think he was too busy to have a vacation. So I don't think he had an idea of what it means to go on a vacation.
だからとりあえずタタルさんに相談をしてみました。
And so to get an idea, he consulted Ms. Tataru.
まあ彼女はバカンス装備を知り尽くしていますからね。
Well, she is the master of vacation clothing.
普段のグラハとは違う大きな柄の入った服はタタルさんがおすすめしてくれたものです。
It looks like Miss Tataru recommended these clothes, which we wouldn't really imagine Graha wearing. You can see they feature these large patterns.
はい。サンクレットはね、これかろうじてリーンに見せられる格好がコンセプトでしたね。
So Thancred. Yeah, this was kind of how far can we push the envelope so that he still looks decent enough for his daughter.
まあ若々しく見えるけれど年齢に応じてチャラすぎないようにと。
Oh, yes, we did want him to look youthful, but then again, at the same time, we didn't want to go too flashy because of his age.
いやでもさ、この写真めちゃくちゃ切れ端入ってる。
I love how that snapshot of him is like he's so into that kebab.
一応水遊びしている娘を砂浜から見守っているお父さん風です。
So our thinking behind this is he'd be watching Reen from the distance on the beach while she goes and plays in the water.
そしてウリエンジェですね。
And next, of course, we have Urianger.
この服とサングラスはサンクレットと一緒に買った想定です。
We imagine he went to buy these clothes and sunglasses together with Thancred.
まあだから彼にしては珍しい仕上がりになっています。
That's probably the reason why this is a rare look for him.
なんならサンクレットより怪しくないよね。
But I mean, he looks less suspicious than Thancred, hopefully.
今の彼はちょくちょくムーンブリダのご両親と連絡を取っているので、バカンスのことを話したところ、夫妻から水に濡れてもいい時計が送られてきました。
And so with Urianger, he still keeps in touch with Moonbrida's parents. And so he mentioned about his trip to Tyrol and how they'll be spending the summer there. And so the husband and wife had sent him a waterproof watch as a gift.
まあ無人島クエストで冒険者が夫妻から送られたのと同じものですね。
It's the same one we receive in the Island Sanctuary quest.
そうですね。あとは夫妻に便乗する形でレボリットたちが送ったイヤリングです。
And then, of course, Moonbrida's parents were nice enough to send those, but also the Loporits wanted to send him a gift as well.
さあ、ヤシトラに関しては、ヤシトラの服装を決めてくださっている名前さんにデザインを書き起こしてもらっています。
As for Yashtala, Namae-san, our artist, decides on her clothing, and she also provided this design.
既存の水着といつものブーツをヤシトラらしいバカンススタイルにしてもらったものです。
An existing swimsuit and standard boots have been arranged to provide a vacation outfit in true Yashtola fashion.
ね、追加されたアクセサリーも彼女らしさ抜群なんですけれども、個人的には黒いペディキュアが塗られているのが特に好きです。
And of course, she accessorized based on her new look, but also I'd like to bring attention to her pedicure. It looks very nice, her black pedicure.
彼女はちゃんと休息というものの有用性を理解しているので、バカンスもそつなくこなします。
Of course, Yashtola is very well versed in the art of vacationing, so I think she did a good job in this.
まあ大人ですね。
Oh, but yeah, for sure, she's so mature.
水着を着ていても落ち着いた魅力を出せるのは彼女ならではだと思います。
Trust Yashtola to exude such a calm allure even when wearing a swimsuit.
最後はエスティニアンですね。
And lastly, we have Estinian.
どうせ用意しないだろうと踏んだタタルさんが送ってくれたものをそのまま着ています。
Tataru figured, hey, he's not going to get his own outfit, so let's just send him one. And he just ended up wearing it as it is.
強気なピンクの正体がそれだよっていう。
Yeah, I can totally see her influence in that very bold pink trousers.
シャーローニ荒野でサボテンの美味しさに目覚めていたので、シャツの柄はこれ多分悪くないと思ってますね。
But I think he got a taste of cacti in the Shaloni wastelands, and I think he actually quite likes the shirt pattern.
あとほとんど見えていませんが、耳元にはルナエンボイアタッカーイヤリングをしています。
You can hardly see it, but he's also wearing a Lunar Envoy's earring of slaying.
これはタタルさんが送ってないはず。おそらくトラル大陸に来る前にラザハンでもらったものですね。
This was something Tataru probably wouldn't have given it to him. He must have received this in Razathan before embarking for Toral.
冒険者の皆さんがあんまり交換してくれなくなって、お店が在庫を抱えていたところにちょうどいいエスティニアンがみたいなやつだったと思います。
I can imagine this was after all of the adventurers have already finished their exchanging of their tokens for the Lunar Envoy equipment, and there was a lot of inventory still left over at Razathan, and then it just so happens an Estinian passes by.
はい、というわけで暁のバカンス装備でした。
Okay, that wraps up all of our Scion's vacation outfits.
皆さんも彼らと一緒ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
皆さんも彼らと一緒にダンジョンに向かうことがあれば、ぜひとっておきのバカンス装備をご用意ください。
If you'll be tackling any dungeons with them, be sure to prepare your own vacation glamour.
駆け足となりましたが、パネルの本編は以上となります。
Yeah, so it was pretty quick, but that covers all the material of our panel.
短い時間ではありましたが、こうして光の戦士の皆さんとお話しできる機会をいただけてとても光栄でした。
It was a short time for us, but thank you so much for the time that we had to spend time with you.
懐かしのキャラクターから最近のキャラクターまで、皆さんとこうして一緒に振り返ることができたのが嬉しかったです。
I'm so happy to have been able to look back at characters old and new together with all of our players.
これからもたくさん冒険をして多くのキャラクターと出会ってください。
I hope you'll encounter many more characters on your adventures to come.
またね、現地でご覧の皆さんは会場内にバトルチャレンジなどの出展もございます。
And so for those who are here at the PAX event, we do have a Final Fantasy XIV booth where we have battle challenges and different activities.
引き続き PAX を十分にお楽しみください。
So I hope you enjoy PAX Australia to your heart's content.
改めて本日はありがとうございました。
Once again, thank you so much for this opportunity.